All right, so I've got a confession to make. I'm a bit of a productivity slut. I love watching YouTube videos, reading articles, books, pretty much anything I can get my hands on that maybe might give me that new insight, a new tool, a new framework to 1000x my productivity. Now, on the one hand, this obsession has served me pretty well in some ways because I have severe ADHD, and all through my 20s, I really struggled with just getting shit done. I was unfocused, I was undisciplined, and yet inside, like I felt I had this ambition, like to do more. So you can see how there's like this friction between those two realities of wanting to get more done, but lacking any kind of meaningful system that would help me actually make progress. And this is where my obsession with productivity was born. It came from a place of just not wanting to be a loser anymore, from not wanting to be a prisoner to my own biology, to wanting to actually tap into the potential I knew I had inside of me. Now, over the past decade, this pursuit of productivity was instrumental in transforming my life, but there is a dark side to productivity, or at least a side that makes it counterproductive. See, the dark side of productivity is when we fall into the trap of just trying to create the perfect system, and we become fixated on tinkering with the different apps and scheduling techniques and goal setting strategies. And in that trap, we spend more time working on the system than we do just actually working. Often, the most productive thing you can do is just to put your butt in the chair and do the work. But the problem is, working on the productivity system often makes us feel productive, and yet we're not actually getting any meaningful work done. It's motion, but not progress. And that's the sneaky trap you can easily fall into when going down the productivity rabbit hole. You start thinking that creating the to-do list counts as doing the actual work. Spoiler alert, it doesn't. In effect, all you've really done is add more unrelated but easy to accomplish work to your day. But the goal isn't to be busy, it's to be effective. And if you want to be effective, the most important concept you got to master is that of leverage. Simply put, leverage means we get more output per unit of input. Or put another way, you do less, you get more. For instance, in college, I worked as a landscaper and I was paid hourly. It did not matter how much work I got done or how good that work was, I got paid the same hourly rate. I had very little leverage. A high leverage activity by comparison is something like writing a book. The first book I published took about a year to write, and it's still earning me money to this day, despite the fact that I've put practically zero energy into it since it launched almost a decade ago. So, with that in mind, the perfect productivity system is one that's going to both increase the quantity and quality of the work we're performing. The goal, therefore, is to get more high leverage tasks done in less time. And that's exactly what you're going to learn how to do in this video, where I'm going to break down the productivity system that's helped me make millions of dollars over the past 10 years. Now, we will get into the nuts and the bolts of the system, but even more important than the details, you're going to learn a thought process that's going to fundamentally change how you think about your inputs relative to your outputs. And by the end of this video, you're going to have a new lens through which to view your activities so that you can ultimately maximize the volume of work you get done and the amount of leverage you apply to that work. But you got to promise me something. Like, don't just let this be productivity porn, a video that you watch and it makes you feel good and ambitious and feeling like you can take on the world, but at the end of the day, you're not actually going to implement any of the things we talk about here. Don't let that be you. Listen, there's no such thing as a perfect productivity system. Pretty much any system can yield incredible results if you actually use it. So make me the promise that you're actually going to commit to using this system. And then when you're ready, let's jump in. Here's the 5-step productivity system that's made me tens of millions of dollars. The first part of my Millionaire productivity system is creating a second brain. Again, I have ADHD. I've had it forever, but I was diagnosed when I was 6 years old. It plagued me all through my 20s. And the main issue I had with ADHD was the fact that I just had so many ideas and thoughts just swirling around my head at any given moment. It was hard to organize it in any kind of meaningful way to make progress towards a goal. And it would get so bad that I would lay in bed at night, like unable to fall asleep just because I had so many thoughts flickering through my head. I just couldn't shut down. And more frustrating is that when I would actually sit down during the day to get work done, like I would just get infinitely distracted. Like my squirrel brain was taking me in a million different directions. And it took me a long time to figure out that the solution was to simply stop trying to hold everything in my head. And the way I ultimately solved for this was to create something called a second brain. At its most basic, a second brain is just a complete mind dump of all the things swirling through your head. I personally use technology, but you could use a notebook. It really doesn't matter. Don't get hung up on this. And here's how it works for me. See, I use Asana, which is a project management software, and the free version of it's like super powerful. So go download that. And every time I have a unique thought or idea that's even remotely compelling or something I want to dive into later, I write it down. Now, most of the thoughts I have on a given day are complete garbage. Still, getting them out of my head and saving them somewhere else, it frees up the mental bandwidth I was otherwise just wasting trying to hold on to that thought. And what's really interesting here from a neurological level is that we're closing cognitive loops. See, whenever you have a thought or something you're trying to remember, it's like opening another application or a tab on your computer. Any one tab isn't likely to tax the system all that much, but you add them up over the course of a day, a week, a month, a year, and suddenly your system is getting bogged down with open, unresolved cognitive loops. And as long as you're holding unnecessary cognitive loops open, you'll never be able to dedicate your full attention and decision-making prowess towards any individual task. In short, you're always holding it in the back of your mind. And this usually plays out in two frustrating ways. In the short term, that idea or whatever, it just takes up mental energy. And in the long term, you're probably gonna lose the majority of the ideas or thoughts that you had in your head. So I believe one of the most important qualities you have to develop if you want to become a millionaire or just more productive is clarity of thought. The second brain is a way of dropping all the excess baggage that you're lugging around the back of your mind so that when you sit down to work on something, you can actually bring every ounce of focus to bear on that task. Now, personally, I update my second brain daily, usually at the end of the night, right before I go to bed. And the timing of this is important because it allows me to get everything out of my brain before I go to bed, which in turn makes it more likely I'm going to get an awesome night's sleep. Now, if focus is your most valuable resource, and I believe it is, not time or whatever anybody else will say, focus is, then keeping a second brain, it's like having a safe, locking up all your valuables so you don't have to haul them around town on you all the time. Now, creating a second brain is one of the best investments you can make on your way to becoming a millionaire or just more productive, but it's only the first part of the process. The next phase of my millionaire productivity system is priority management. One of the recurring traits I see most often in hyper successful people is they don't waste time doing stupid things. Truth is, most people spend all their time doing shit that just doesn't matter. And as Peter Drucker said, there's no greater waste than to do with excellence that which shouldn't be done at all. Now, here's the thing. Hyper successful people like Elon Musk, they have just as much time in the day as all the rest of us. And yet they seem to get so much more done. Somehow, Elon is simultaneously taking us to Mars, changing how we drive, and boring tunnels under LA. And the question is, how does he manage to get so much done? Well, he does it by focusing on the very few number of things that actually matter. That is, he's built a skill of managing his priorities. And if you want to be a millionaire, successful, or just more productive again, you've got to do the same. Now, you might be familiar with the Pareto principle, otherwise known as the 80-20 rule, which in its most simple form says that in almost all systems, a disproportionately few number of inputs account for the majority of outputs. Or we could twist this around and put it another way. Only 20% of what you do accounts for 80% of your results. The key then is to focus your time and your energy on executing that 20% with excellence. After all, these are the big levers that are going to pay the biggest dividends. But here's the problem. Actually, there's two problems. First, how do you actually know what are the big levers to pull? Second, how do we structure our time so that we're not constantly sucked into doing the non-important work, like emails, social media, or just, meetings? Let's solve for that first problem, like how to identify which levers to pull. And then let's talk about how to actually stay on task throughout the day. I was in a mastermind last year with Tom Bilyeu, who shared a really powerful framework that I've been using. It's awesome. Now, this guy, if you're not familiar with Tom, he built Quest Nutrition to $1 billion exit, and he's currently working on building the next Disney with his production studio. So when he shares a system for optimization, I listen, and it was really powerful for me. So here's the framework. It's called I.C.E, I-C-E. To begin with, we create 3 columns in a notebook and we label them impact, confidence, and ease. Now on the left side, we're gonna list out all the tasks that we've accumulated inside of our second brain. And we're gonna rank order these tasks on a scale of 1 to 10 for each of the 3 categories. The first is impact. And the question that you have to ask here is, okay, on a scale of 1 to 10, if I were to complete this task, how impactful would it be? 10 would be, dang, yeah, it's gonna change the world. 1 would be, meh, nobody will even notice. Didn't really move the dial at all. Next is we're gonna rank for confidence, which is just how confident are you in your ability to actually execute the thing? I mean, yeah, it'd be pretty impactful if we could fly to Mars. However, I have zero confidence in my ability to make that happen. And this is important because confidence feeds belief. And your belief in whether or not a thing is even possible or if it's going to be easy or difficult is largely going to influence your ability to actually do that thing. And last, we rank our tasks for ease, which is just how easy would it be to do this thing? So let's use an example of writing a book and put it through this framework. For me, writing a book has been incredibly powerful for growing my different businesses. So in terms of impact, I'd put this at like a 9 or a 10 even. And since I've written a dozen books, I also have a high degree of confidence in my ability to do this. So we'll put that at a 9. In terms of ease, well, like writing's never easy, but I do have a pretty good system worked out at this point. So that might be a 6, which gives us a grand score of around 25. Now, if I have a task over 25 points, I consider that a very high priority. I tag this in my second brain as critical. If a task is between say 17 and 25 points, I tag that as moderately important. And then below 17, it's just a low priority. Now, quick note here is like, don't get too caught up in the numbers. Like this is just a framework for helping organize your thoughts and create priorities. You're gonna have to apply your own personal discretion and judgment in deciding what you should actually work on at any given moment. But this is a helpful starting point. Now that we have a better understanding of our priorities, we're gonna lay out the tasks in a way that's going to create a maximally effective day. And to do this, we move on to the third part of my Millionaire productivity system, creating amplified impact time. Scott Adams, the creator of Dilbert, said, "Goals are for losers, systems are for winners." Now, I love goals as much as the next person, but there's a lot of truth in his statement. When I was younger, I was guilty of creating goals that were really nothing more than sugar-coated wishes. And the problem with goals is that setting them down, like writing them out, tricks our brain into think we're actually doing something productive. And sure, goal setting is usually accompanied in the short term by that dopamine bump, and it feels good, but eventually that wears off and you're just right back to square one. And if this has ever happened to you, don't beat yourself up. We've all been there. More importantly, it's not your fault because the game we've been taught, it's rigged against us from the start. See, goals are for losers because they focus on the outcome, which depending on the goal could be really far off in the future. For instance, if your goal is to lose 15 pounds by the end of the year, well, you only ever know if you succeeded or failed either at the end of the year or when you lose 15 pounds. And the truth is, losing 15 pounds is hard. It's a long process. It doesn't happen overnight. So if you can only ever measure progress at the end, then if you're like most people, you're probably just gonna burn out and give up. Now, millionaires, hyper successful people, really productive people, they don't fall into this trap. And instead of focusing on the outcomes, they focus on the process. Now, I'm not saying that millionaires don't set goals. That's not true, they do. But they also create something which psychologists refer to as an implementation intention. Now, the simplest form of an implementation intention is to simply state, what are you gonna do and when are you gonna do it? I know it sounds fancy, but that's all it is. What are you gonna do and when are you gonna do it? Now, implementation intentions are critical because they specify the daily actions that you need to perform to achieve your desired result. So my personal process for improving productivity through an implementation intention is through something I call amplified impact time. All right, this is a 2-part system. Part 1 is priority setting and part 2 is time blocking. First, we're gonna set our daily priorities, which should be pretty straightforward if you've already implemented a priority management system using something like the I.C.E method we talked about before to organize your second brain. Each day, we're gonna take those tasks we've deemed most important and we're gonna create our 2 to do, 3 to free, and 5 to thrive. So let's start with the 5 to Thrive. The 5 to Thrive are 5 tasks that you deem the absolute most important for the next month, quarter, or year. Your timelines may vary depending on the type of goal, but generally try to limit your number of top priority goals to 5. Any more than that, and you're probably just not going to make any meaningful progress towards any of them. So remember, Bill Gates, I think, said it, we tend to overestimate what we can do in a year and underestimate what we can do in 5. So you're going to want to set yourself up for success and always have 5, no more, no less, in terms of goals towards which you're working at any given moment. Next, it's going to be your 3 to free, which are, to me, the absolute most important tasks I need to get done in a single day. Again, 3 might not seem like very much, but it's better to crush your priority list and feel accomplished than bite off more than you can chew and then feel horrible at the end of the day. Another way to look at the 3 to free list is to ask yourself, if I could accomplish only 3 things today, and by doing those 3 things, I would feel like a stunning success, what would those 3 things be? These should almost always be tasks rated above 25 on the I.C.E scale. And then finally, we're going to set our days to do, which are tasks with less than 15 points on the I.C.E scale. And it's important to make space for these small, seemingly unimportant tasks like doing the laundry or mowing the lawn, because if you don't do them, they start to add up and just take a mental toll. So picking away at them on a daily basis, it's better than just ignoring them and letting them build up. And the power of this framework is in realizing that success is not measured by how much you get done, but by what you get done. All right, so we've established our 5 to Thrive, our 3 to Free, and our 2 to Do. It's time to move on to the second part of amplified impact time blocking. Now, it's seriously not an exaggeration to say that time blocking fundamentally changed my life. See, with ADHD, I hated structure and schedules and planning. And I wanted to be free. I wanted to be spontaneous. I wanted to live in the moment. But there's a problem with this. The things I want to do in the moment are rarely the things that are good for me in the long term. It took me a long time to figure out that you either own your schedule or your schedule owns you. And time blocking in a nutshell is simply sitting down with your to-do list and actually scheduling time on your calendar for when you plan to tackle those tasks. Personally, I like to sit down each night before bed and plot out the next day's activities as though I were constructing the perfect, most effective day for future me. Now, in the beginning, here's the rookie mistake you're gonna make. You're gonna overestimate how much you can actually get done because you'll underestimate how long everything actually takes. So avoid this by scheduling more time than you think a task will actually take, and then leave plenty of buffer between activities. Do not jam your calendar with back-to-back-to-back activities, because it's not a matter of if you'll eventually get sidetracked, it's just a matter of when. Also, be realistic. You can only get so much high-quality work done in a day, so mix in some moderate and low-importance tasks to give your mind the space for the really critical stuff. Also, here's the unfortunate truth. No matter how well you plan your day, no matter how well you set your priorities, and no matter how well intentioned you are, you will eventually slip up, you'll get distracted, or you'll have to deal with some unforeseen event, and your schedule is just going to go right out the window. And this leads us into the fourth, and maybe the most important part of this millionaire productivity system, is intention maintenance. Humans are a walking contradiction. On the one hand, our brains have evolved for maximum efficiency. It's highly adept at simplifying and encoding complex stimuli for future retrieval. We call this muscle memory, and it's why things get easier over time, aka just how we learn. And this makes sense when you consider just how much energy your brain gobbles up. Your brain itself, it makes up less than 2% of your total body weight, but it accounts for over 20% of your body's energy consumption. So if your brain was always running at full capacity, you'd literally be an energy drained puddle, just unable to get out of bed every morning. Your brain doesn't want this. In fact, your brain only wants one thing. It wants to keep you alive. That's literally its only goal. And to that end, it's gonna do its damnedest to expend as little energy as possible, keeping you not dead. And this is why binge watching Netflix or scrolling Instagram and playing video games, it's so easy, because your brain wants to shut down and go on autopilot. But is that what you really want? See, here's the thing. The brain is inherently lazy, but you are not. Your brain simply wants to survive, whereas you probably want to thrive. You don't want to waste your time on meaningless dribble. And we know this because studies consistently show that people reach their highest levels of happiness and fulfillment when they're challenged or fully engaged in accomplishing difficult tasks. Now, this is the polar opposite of what your brain wants. And so in a very real way, you're locked in this battle for your attention with your brain. Now, it's helpful to know then, if you're in this war, what are the two tactics your brain is going to use to win the attention war? First, it's going to suck you into like a zombie-like state of complacency and distraction without you even noticing. This occurs when you tell yourself something like, I'm just going to check TikTok real quick. And the next thing you know, 45 minutes have passed and you're watching videos of adorable balls of fluff doing whatever. Second, your brain tricks you into consciously deciding I'm either too tired to do this right now, or I'm simply not ready to do it right now. Regardless of which tactic your brain deploys, I've discovered there's a single question that, if asked at the right moment, can just turn the tables and put me back on the path of productive righteousness. The question is, what's my outcome? And it might not seem like much, but this question, it's incredibly powerful because it's a pattern interrupt that pulls you out of autopilot, stops you from just going through the motion, and gives you a minute to consider, what are you really trying to accomplish? Now, whether you're out to lunch with a loved one, you're working on a book report at the coffee shop, or you're on a sales call, it's really easy just to tune out, lose sight of what you're actually doing, and just start going through the motions. So let's rewind for a second and apply this question to this video that you're watching right now and what brought you here. What's your outcome? Why are you watching this? Are you just distracting yourself from the work you know you should be doing, or are you actually taking notes and planning to implement what you learn? Even more broadly, what's the real goal behind building a productivity system in the first place? It's not just to get more stuff done, right? No, the reason you want to be more productive is because you think it'll somehow make your life better. Now, by establishing an intention maintenance routine and regularly asking the question, what's my outcome? You're creating a lens through which you filter all of your activities to ensure you're actually moving towards your desired goal of, a better life. So here's how to practically implement this question. I use technology and I program an alarm to go off on my phone randomly a few times throughout the day. Every time it goes off, you stop whatever you're doing for just a second and you ask the question, what's my outcome? That is, why are you there in that moment doing that thing? It's incredible just how effective this technique is. And I'll bet guarantee it's going to surprise you just how often that alarm, it's going to go off and you're going to find yourself doing something completely unrelated to your stated goals and to-do list. But now that you've been made aware that you've been lured into that complacency state by your brain, you can turn the tables, you can take back the control. Now, the truth is, intention maintenance is hard. It's really hard. I get it, but it's easily one of the most valuable skills to develop if you want to maximize your productivity, which is why in the next part of this productivity system, we're going to continue developing that intention muscle by improving the clarity of our thoughts through a process called thinking time. Now, whatever you want to call it, thinking time, meditation, walking quiet time, whatever, prayer. People have been talking about the benefits of meditation and silence and thinking for a long time. And I'm not going to go too deep into it here, but it is a known quantity within the scientific community for its ability to lower your stress levels, increase your focus, and just overall improve the quality of life. And despite having been blasted by everybody and their guru about how great meditation is, I personally took a really long time to come around and get on the meditation train. And it was not for a lack of trying. Remember, this guy's got ADHD, so it's like sitting still with my thoughts for more than 3.2 seconds at a time. It's really hard. Meditation is literally my nemesis. But I do not believe it is a sheer coincidence that pretty much every single uber successful person I've ever met, they've implemented some sort of quiet reflection time into their life. Whether that's meditation, prayer, long walks, hot showers, whatever. It helps declutter your mind so that you can think and move forward through life with clarity of vision. Now, the question is, what does this have to do with productivity? And in my mind, it has everything to do with it. See, Gandhi said, your beliefs become your thoughts become your words become your actions become your habits become your values, and your values become your destiny. By improving the quality of your thoughts, you will improve the quality of your actions. And if that's not a fantastic way to improve your productivity, I just don't know what is. Now, the thing with meditation, or as I personally call it, thinking time, is it's hard. It is really, really hard And I don't know if it ever gets any easier. The truth is, like, thinking ain't easy, which is why most people don't do it. But if you want uncommon results, you can't perform common actions. So here's how I think about meditation or thinking time or quiet reflection. Meditation is like weightlifting for your mind. The more you do it, the stronger your focus muscle becomes. But you don't go to the gym just expecting one day it's gonna magically get easier. No, you go knowing it's never gonna get easier, you're just gonna get better. And that with time, you'll be able to move increasingly large amounts of weight. It's the same with meditation and thinking time. In the beginning, you're gonna struggle to sit in silence for just more than a couple seconds before your monkey mind sprints off in some random direction. That's to be expected. That's the game. But if you just keep showing up and putting in the work, your ability to focus it's going to dramatically improve, which in turn is going to enable you to increase the quantity of work you're going to be able to complete throughout the day. Now, if you remember at the beginning of this video, I said productivity is a result of doing more high leverage activities in less time. If you take this 5-part productivity system and you apply it consistently to your life, you're gonna see tremendous results. I guarantee it. But it starts by clearing your mind and creating a second brain so that you don't have unnecessary cognitive loops running. Then you're going to implement a priority management system that'll enable you to maximize your amplified impact time. If you do nothing else but these 2 steps, you'd likely quadruple your productivity. But when you go one step further and you introduce an intention maintenance practice coupled with daily thinking time, if you do that, then it's just a matter of time until this becomes your $1 million productivity system.